Hey, how you doing? I've spent the last 2 weeks trying to write a script for a video and failing miserably. I've been trying to write all about this book here, the textbook of Ju-Jitsu by Sadu Uyenishi. It was published in 1905 by Uyenishi, who was one of the very first Jiu-Jitsu instructors from Japan to come and teach in the UK. Himself and Yukio Tani came originally to train at and to teach out of the Barton-Wright club, founded by Edward Barton-Wright. And that very quickly fell apart, and they both opened up their own clubs. The problem is that I've really struggled to write something that's both articulate and does him justice, because he was a pretty fantastic young man. He was 25 when the book came out. He'd already been in the UK for 5 years at that point. He was born, I think, 14 years after the samurai class was abolished in Japan. And whilst nobody seems to openly say so, from the descriptions of his father, it sounds very much as though he was from a samurai family. And the world was opening up. Japan was effectively a closed shop until that point. And he was one of the first generation of young Japanese people to travel the world and to experience other cultures and to bring the culture of Japan to other places around the world. So he deserves a lot of respect, I think. And this is a fantastic book. I can't really say enough about how good it is. It's really clear in its instructions. There's a lot of pages in it. I mean, how many pages is it? Let's have a little look. It's well over 100 pages. There's a lot of description of lots of different Japanese Jiu-Jitsu or Judo, because they use the words interchangeably in this, which I think is quite an interesting point in and of itself. There's a lot of photos that accompany them, but one of the things that's really interesting in this book that I've not come across in any other book is these. That is effectively a whole page print of the film of a throw. So each frame of the film is there on the page. And you may have seen some of these have been reanimated. So the people have scanned these pages in and turned it back into movies, which you can do with digital editing software. And I've done that too in this video. I didn't want to just use other people's because I don't really think that's fair. So I've done it myself, and we'll see some of those later. But yeah, I was struggling to come up with a decent script, a decent description of this man, when I realised that because this version here isn't a first edition, this is a fourth edition of the book, which came out a few decades after it was originally printed. It was originally published back in 1905, and has a chapter at the end by a chap called Percy Longhurst, who we've come across before in various other books. He was a martial artist of the time and quite a prolific writer. And he wrote what is called a word picture of Sadu Uyenishi. So I figured that instead of me trying to describe a man who died somewhere in the region of 100 years ago, I'll just read to you the words of a man who trained with him and knew him well. It's possible that the reader will be interested in learning somewhat relating personally to the talented author of this volume, itself perhaps the most valuable treatise on the Japanese art of Jiu-Jitsu, otherwise Judo, that has been published. So simply and lucidly stated are the movements required for the correct performance of the holds, throws, locks, etc. dealt with. So lacking is it in those elements of the sensational which some writers upon the subject of the soft art have thought proper to embellish their compilations. It is further possible that readers will find interest in becoming acquainted with the development of Jiu-Jitsu outside Japan, since its introduction into England by Mr. Uyenishi and his compatriot Yukio Tani nearly 40 years ago. I knew Sadakazu Uyenishi, stage name Raku. No particular merit attaches thereto, but I was among the first of the English wrestlers and athletes upon whom he demonstrated the wonderful efficiency of the art, which some, even today, still persist in referring to as Japanese wrestling. The Japanese themselves term it a war exercise, the art of self-defense. They are utilitarians, and when Jiu-Jitsu was developed, they had no conception of it as a sport, an athletic recreation. It was, and to them is, a serious exercise for a serious purpose. Uyenishi was a past master of the art and a brilliant teacher. It was his teaching, the lessons I had from him, that gave me the convincing proof of the genuine value of Jiu-Jitsu as the best means yet devised to accomplish the purpose for which it was intended. Uyenishi's talent as an instructor was equal to his skill as an exponent. In his many music hall contests, which he abandoned to become a teacher, there was none of the theatrical element, the playing to the gallery, the attempt to make a fool of his opponent. I imagine it never entered his mind that he was providing the spectators with entertainment. A sportsman, according to the best Western standards, a gentleman, an artist in his own way, this bespectacled young Japanese whose refined appearance carried no suggestion of his astonishing physical qualities and powers, a muscular development of all-over excellence that was a delight to the eye, made friends wherever he went. An expert swimmer, he dived fully clothed from Queensbridge, Belfast, to effect the rescue and restoration, by methods known only to expert practitioners of Jiu-Jitsu, of a drowning man. Competent in the arts of Rokushaku Bo and Hanbo, exercises nearly resembling the Old English quarterstaff and single stick play, he was a first-rank exponent of Kenjutsu, the sword art of Japan. Sadu Uyenishi was one never to be forgotten, however brief the acquaintance. I have written was because, having relinquished his teaching school in London and his position as instructor in Jiu-Jitsu at the headquarters Army Gymnasium in Aldershot, Uyenishi decided to return to his own country, where his death took place a number of years ago. As a teacher, Uyenishi was patient in the extreme, sparing no effort to get his pupil to understand the theory and master the practice of whatever throw or movement he was demonstrating. And never would he take the least undue advantage of his own knowledge and powers. To make the pupil proficient was his sole purpose. Jiu-Jitsu, judo, is too commonly regarded as a collection of foul tricks wherein art is combined with strength and quickness to bring about a result that means the disablement of the opponent, or forcing him into such a position that disablement can easily follow. Such tricks are a part of Jiu-Jitsu. It would not be a system of self-defense were it otherwise, but Uyenishi was not eager to exploit this side of Jiu-Jitsu. Rather did he prefer to concentrate his attention and the interest of his pupil on the throws, mastery of which he held to be the first essential of Jiu-Jitsu proficiency. For that reason, the greater part of this textbook is devoted to a painstaking explanation of the several methods of bringing an opponent to the ground. In this respect, it differs wholly from most other books explaining the art. The reader is strongly recommended to turn back to Chapter 4 and read carefully the opening paragraphs. When he has mastered the making of the throws that follow, he will realise that his time has been spent to greater profit than if he had devoted it to the learning of the many trick defences and attacks. It is of interest to note the developments of Jiu-Jitsu in England and elsewhere. Perhaps these have not been so encouraging or so widely spread as Uyenishi had hoped. Yet there is a greater practice of the art than appears on the surface. Societies for the encouragement and teaching of Jiu-Jitsu have come into existence. There are numerous clubs scattered about the country which profess its teaching and practice. There are a number of private instructors. Some of the police organisations have recognised the value of the art and encouraged the learning of some part of it among their members. A Jiu-Jitsu club has been formed at both Oxford and Cambridge universities. A number of matches are held annually, perhaps the most important being those to determine the annual possession of a valuable challenge trophy presented by the Japanese ambassador to England. The headquarters of this art in this country is the Budokwai, a club in London open to both British and Japanese members, ladies as well as men, founded by a Mr. Koizumi, himself an expert amateur jiu-jitsuan and of high grade as a belt wearer. The annual display given by members of the Budokwai shortly before Christmas is an event that no one interested in the subject should miss. In Germany, France and other European countries are existing numerous coteries for the practice and development of the art. International matches are frequently arranged. Germany has even taken the lead in establishing European Jiu-Jitsu championships, but it is not certain that these are to be taken very seriously. One of the main principles of the Japanese art is that expert knowledge of it places the physically small and not unduly strong person, though strength and stamina are qualities having a very real value in a Jiu-Jitsu encounter, whatever may be asserted to the contrary, on a fighting equality, at least, with an opponent owning the apparent great advantages of superior bulk, weight and muscular power. The art of the Jiu-Jitsuan is indicated by his degree of skill, which permits him to offset these advantages and obtain the victory. Yet the German Jiu-Jitsu authorities decided that the European Championships should be held at certain specified weights. To S.K. Uyenishi, it was a matter of indifference whether his opponents weighed 9 or 16 stone. I think that's a lovely little thing, and I just want to quickly say that Uyenishi himself stood 5 feet 5 inches tall and weighed 9 stone and 2 pounds. So was a tiny, tiny man. Not quite half my weight, but not an awful lot less than half my weight. 9 stone, it feels like I've had sandwiches that weighed more than that. But anyway, this is an amazing book. It really is. It's quite rare to get hold of. But because it is out of copyright, it's now in the public domain here in the UK. This is the book that I'm going to be releasing to my supporters on Patreon. So if you're interested in getting a copy, it'll be a PDF of high resolution images of each page. Then pop across to Patreon, and if you are able, then it would be great if you could support the channel. There's only one paid post a month, so whilst it says support per post, it's actually only ever one a month. So yeah, thanks very much for watching this video. It's an amazing book, and I really hope if you get a copy of it, whether it's my PDF or you get your own original copy, that you enjoy it as much as I do.